All right, what's up, listeners? Welcome back to Predator vs. Movies. I'm Alex.
I'm Aidan.
Peter's still not here.
No, Peter.
And this is... Yeah, okay.
No, Peter.
That's weird. This is a podcast where we discuss and review the latest movie releases. We're going to start off with a non-spoiler review before diving into a deep discussion of the film, and then we're going to ask the most important question: would this movie be better if the alien from Predator was in it? This week, we are going to be reviewing Paul Schrader's Master Gardener. But before we get into that, we have some news for you. First of all, in the CW has long-standing reputation for taking popular IP and turning it into TV shows beloved by middle schoolers and teenagers. The DC Universe, the Arrowverse, The Walking Dead, I think, was a comic. A third thing that I can't think of. Oh, you're right. Take that one back. Powerpuff Girls, I think, was almost...
the thing that was scrapped.
They failed, yeah, it was scrapped. A third thing. Next in line is a show called The Chosen One, and it is based on the biggest IP of all time. This is a quote from an executive.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, the biggest IP of all time, Jesus. Definitely, for sure.
That is a hilarious way to frame the Bible.
It's so this late capitalist Hollywood.
Yeah.
But of course they call it something like that.
It also implies that like the Bible's like owned by someone. Like someone holds
the
intellectual rights to the Bible.
I feel like they've lost the meaning of what IP stands for.
Yeah.
They just think it means like recognizable characters, I guess. But it's property. It's intellectual property. And you're right, it isn't owned by anyone.
Yeah, how come
unless you're talking about the big guy upstairs.
One might argue is that's what makes the Bible so sacred, is that it is owned by none. One might argue that. So
sacred that only the CW can be charged with creating a show about it.
Okay, but for real, like, they better be giving Jesus like a licensing fee for that, because that's actually crazy. If not,
I don't know. And like, we laugh, but also I know that's gonna be like the most watched show in like the Rust Belt of America. Or the Bible Belt. Like the Good Doctor shit. Like if they like that, they're gonna eat the shit out of this show.
I can't wait to see scenes in which Jesus meets up with his other millennial friends at a coffee shop where they can discuss their plans and their problems. That's gonna be
absolutely awesome. And I can't wait for like the awful CG like things he does. I'm not that familiar with this IP, so I can't get any specific examples. Healing the sick. They'll CG the healing the hills from glowy hands. Yeah. In other news, Flash Bad. This is our segment, Flash Bad.
This is the anti-Flash podcast. You're tuning into Predator against... I guess it is Predator versus Flash. We really are. We really are fighting against Flash here, yeah.
So, to explain, neither of us have seen this movie. And we also, on several different levels, refuse to watch it. Morally, philosophically, literally, financially.
For the sake of our individual sanity,
refused to watch this movie. But we have, and this might be more important, seen pirated clips on Twitter. Maybe collectively 30 seconds of the film.
Yeah.
Plus what the trailer shows us. So like a good 3 minutes of this film has been seen by our eyes and our brains, unfortunately, for the detriment of our health.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the worst clips, one of the ones is, and this was very popular for a while, where it's the 3-shot of both Flashes and Superwoman, and, it is, the video game arc around, and I saw, all the things where, the Lego icons appear above their heads,
Because, for explanation, it looks like it's the kind of shot where you're transitioning
cutscene
from
just ended. Yeah.
yeah, so that you can start playing the game. That's gonna be a sick game when you can start playing as the Flash. I'm still waiting for a Flash game. So honestly, if this movie's bad, I'd be willing to play the game.
Sure.
But yeah, so that doesn't look great. I mean, just the whole idea of fighting on an open plane is visually like
the gray sludge,
bland.
Infinite Horizon. Yeah.
But this is worse than like
I know.
Endgame. There's the Transformers, the new one has an infinite sludge kind of thing. But like
this
that
one
is
is
still
even less
better
character. Yeah.
Yeah, this looks like they opened like an engine, like a rendering engine, and then forgot to plug in the background. So it's just like open plane, like they just didn't do anything, and they're like, yeah, that's good. Like, and Andy Muschietti just walked in and was like, yeah, that's good. You know?
I'm very curious to hear the context as to why the characters find themselves in that liminal endless plane. Like,
yeah, it looks like, I don't know, maybe it's the Mojave, but like I just feel like the explanation's going to be, oh, we had to get everyone out of the city to save the civilians, got to move the whole fight.
Which is, again, like, that's another thing of, like, the DC universe is just characterized by constant reactions to, like, the previous things. Like, because that was such a big criticism of the Zack Snyder movies that, like, how many people did Superman just kill by going through that building? So it's like...
The collateral damage of Man of Steel is pretty intense.
Yeah.
That's kind of... Maybe it's an extreme, but now they've gone the opposite extreme where, you're right, they're afraid to have civilians injured. Also, I don't know if you heard this, but it's not just Man of Steel anymore. Like, apparently in the new Fast and Furious, there was like a big bomb goes off or something, and there's a newscast like immediately after where they're like, luckily no one was injured, no one died. It's like you're just taking away the stakes. I don't know why they feel the need to do that. It's quite silly.
I also feel like the MCU has done that a little bit, but I can't think of an example off the top of my head either. But I felt like they were reacting to that as well. I guess there was the whole like Sokovia Accords like arc within that. That was kind of a reaction, but that was actually like a baked-in storyline. In fairness,
Sokovia Accords really worked for me though, because I think it's a nice way of like actually acknowledging the other movies.
Yeah.
And having those have ramifications. So that's a good example for sure.
No, I agree.
But I had a different thought. But some other more recent clips we've been seeing were the CGI babies that the Flash saves from, I think there's like a hospital explosion.
Yeah.
God, I will say, like, so scary.
I think the microwave clip is reversed. I heard something like that.
Yeah,
like, yeah, he's not putting the baby in the microwave.
well. To take the baby out of the microwave, he does in fact at one point put it in the microwave. There's like that's how he's saving the baby is he puts it in the microwave. So like it starts
like
off
Indiana
like
Jones. It's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull refrigerator scene, but like amplified.
Yes it is. Yeah. So basically what happens is he's running and the debris is falling and he's slow motion, he's in the air and he sees a microwave, he opens it. You must have missed this clip. Grabs a burrito, and he eats it in like the most disturbing way you could possibly eat a burrito. Like he turns profile and like sticks it too far in his mouth. Like a lot of things are wrong with it. Maybe it's a fake burrito. I don't know. But so he does that. Now the microwave is empty and he's refueled, and then he puts a baby in the microwave, and then the clip you saw was him taking it out at the end, which was reversed. And then the creepy way he smiles, like the cut they do is so funny.
Perhaps
so
the most
really
horrifying clip. The most horrifying clip is the disgusting and very much unethical CGI zombies that appear. They have resurrected Christopher Reeves in the movie. I don't know if you saw that. That is fucked up. Don't do that shit.
I saw Christopher Reeves next to Supergirl, and not only is it like terrible, it also like the worst this has ever looked. I've seen tons of clips like comparing what the shots look like, and they're just like baffling. Like, why would you shoot it like that? if you thought this was morally reprehensible at all, like it's bad. I mean, Rogue One wasn't great either. They did this for Rogue One as well. And I thought we were past this, but
I thought we were too.
Hmm?
But no, it's like I find it so depressing, and like especially, do you remember like the Star Wars press thing that had come out where they were like, yeah, audiences just won't accept a recast, like we have to de-age.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Like in Mandalorian, they somehow found an actor who looks almost exactly like a young Mark Hamill, and they are using his performance. Like it is him performing that they are deep faking Mark Hamill's face onto. Why take that extra step?
Which actively makes him look less like Luke Skywalker. He looks worse.
Yeah.
And it's Hollywood again taking all the wrong lessons from complaints. So that was the complaint of the Solo thing, where they thought they weren't accepting Alden Ehrenreich's performance as Solo, which was not the problem people had with that movie. Having revisited it a while ago, but you know, I've seen it more than once. That movie's not that bad, and Alden Ehrenreich, I don't think is the problem. I think the movie as a concept is stupid and wasn't necessary. But if you're gonna make the movie, recast. It worked really well, actually. That part.
It is also, as a side note, one of the darkest blockbuster movies I've seen in like 10 years. I don't mean like morally, like just there is very little light. Like every time I see a clip from that movie, I'm like, holy fuck, it looked like that? Like if you just look up Solo and you just look at the shots, it's actually insane. Like how the small amount of light that is in the frame. But yeah, that's
I think it's kind of low contrast from my recollection. But I thought you were talking about the ending. I stand by the Solo ending before the stupid Sabacc thing. But when he, spoiler for an ancient movie, but when he shoots Woody Harrelson, like just shoots him dead, I was like, bold move for a blockbuster movie for a guy to, like, he has a kind of a downward arc morally, I think, in this movie. In that movie, he goes from kind of like a charming guy, and then he just kills the guy who was his mentor. That's kind of ballsy for a blockbuster.
It's actually interesting,
I was actually talking to someone about this literally yesterday, about Solo, and we were discussing how, one, that there were two terrible ideas in the production of that movie. First of all, firing Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who are probably going to deliver another banger because they're great at what they do. The second biggest mistake was, I think, hiring Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Because why? What in their filmography made you think that they were going to produce a Solo movie that was going to be anything like what we got? Right?
Sure.
Like...
Right. Like, yeah, like they inevitably were going to step in. What is what you mean?
Yeah, like inevitably they were going to make... They're kind of like... The way they take IP in 21 Jump Street, for example, that's what they were going to do with that. If that's what you wanted, like, great, hire them. But clearly that's not what they wanted, so why would you... That seems like a dumb choice to begin with. And I love those guys. I think they're great at what they do. But back to... Let's take it back to The Flash. You kind of got... Whoa, sidetrack. Something about the... Oh, yeah. Someone tweeted this, and... You kind of know based on, like, I've seen Flashpoint on the CW show, for example. The point of Flashpoint, is that you have to, like, let the past go and be, like, accept that that's what happened and move forward. And then it's so antithetical to be bringing back the jangly key zombie actors to be like, remember the past? Wasn't that so great? The multiverse, the possibilities are endless. And
it's never ending.
With
the advent of AI, it's never gone. It's never gone. We can live there forever.
God, like, just like regression of the highest order of people like living out their childhood action figure dreams forever.
Didn't Michael Shannon say that about the movie, where he was like, playing General Zod again actually fucking sucked because it was like a guy playing with action figures.
I think he did say action figures. I think you're right. But yeah, he did not enjoy... He speaks quite fondly of working with Zack Snyder, who, like, I don't like Zack Snyder's movies,
Neither do I.
but he is a visionary. He just has a vision that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
But like, he's making his movies. He's a very clear brand of movies, and I prefer that any day of the week over whatever the hell this is. This is
absolutely.
slop. This is like treating consumers like they are, I don't know, like prison inmates, and giving them like lowest common denominator enjoyment. It's really turning film into content. Quite depressing altogether is what kind of the point of this segment was. Haven't seen the movie.
Is the anti-Flash
refuse to see the
segment.
movie. Yeah. In case you weren't clear on that before, or if you missed it somehow, missed the warning at the top. There was a trailer we watched.
Sure
we can
was.
flip to positive. Netflix has a movie coming out this year called They Cloned Tyrone. It stars
John
Boyega,
Boyega, Jamie Foxx.
Thank you. And I'm double checking Teyonah Parris. I did think that's what it was. And looks really fun. It's I think it's set in the 70s. Maybe.
Yeah, that
It seemed like
it.
the tone of the trailer was 70s, but I can double check that.
It looked like a fun, stylish time. Like a good stylish comedy.
stylish time. Yeah. It's a science fiction comedy mystery, as Wikipedia says, set in the 1970s, and it's about like an underground science lab that are cloning, I think exclusively black people in a particular neighborhood. And yeah, I think it looks quite charming. Actually, No, there have been some good Netflix movies. I was gonna diss Netflix, but they released Power of the Dog. They did.
They do put out a lot of trash, though. To be fair,
they do. Yeah.
If I see the red N on a film, I am less likely to watch it. Certainly.
Red N stands for no, thank you.
Yeah.
Most of the time, unless they've helped fund the work of an auteur. But I think this looks fun. John Boyega. This is maybe the first role where I'll be like, John Boyega is doing some good acting. I don't think he didn't really work for either of us. I think for The Woman King.
No.
And I don't think I've seen anything else with him in it. But
I don't even know if his performance. I don't even know if I'd say his performance was bad in Woman King though. It's just like I don't believe for 1 second. Like just for whatever reason, I was like, this is just a dude from the modern day. Like I just don't buy this like at all.
I think for me, I think the movie is just bad. That movie, I think it's just written strangely. So, his role is one of the strange parts. So I don't. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have anything else to say about They Cloned Tyrone?
The joke at the end of the trailer is funny when the guy comes in and interrupts the reporter, and then the reporter's like, "Yes, that is the leading theory."
Yeah, and he's speaking with like, I think it's AAVE, and the white reporter's like, "Yes, that is what is happening," So yeah, that it looks fun. But today we watched a not so fun movie. Aidan, do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so we did watch a movie known as Master Gardener. Now it was written and directed by a little guy named Paul Schrader, in case you weren't aware, and it stars Joel Edgerton, Sigourney Weaver, Quintessa Swindell, and Isai Morales. Cinematography is by Alexander Dinen. Sorry. What else do we usually say? Runtime is 107 minutes. It has multiple release dates. It first premiered in Venice on September 3rd, but got a widespread release on May 19th in the United States. Budget was about $4.7 million, and it has so far made $821,183.
I thought you were gonna say $8, and I was gonna be like, yeah, it did.
It's like the 21 Jump Street clip that's going around. It's like, this is fucking $7. That's not 21. That's super bad. I don't know why I said 21 Jump Street. Super bad.
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry.
Same actor. Same Jonah Hill.
Same Jonah Hill.
I was gonna say this stars Black Adam's own Quintessa Swindell.
Oh, is she
from
that?
They played Cyclone from Black Adam. But yes, we watched that, and now we play a game called Predacritic. There's a website on the internet called Metacritic, where critics' reviews of a movie are scored averaged out of 100, and we are going to guess where it lands in that metric. If it gets 60 or above, it's green. If it's 80 or above, it's must see. If it's maybe like 60 to 45, it's yellow, and if it's below that, it's red. So I'm going first. I spun the wheel.
Nice. We like to hear that.
I don't. The stakes are higher, as always, when Peter's not here.
That's
the
true.
odds of winning are higher, but so are the odds of losing and having
You also
to
can't,
recap
like,
the movie.
You also can't play the game as effectively because you are ultimately just choosing higher or lower, and it's like
Basically.
yeah.
So I have a pretty good feeling where this is gonna land. I'm not gonna beat around the bush too much. 53. That's
Sure.
where I think this lands.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'll come right out and say I don't think this movie is good. And in fact, I would even go as far as say I think this movie is kind of bad.
Bad. The opposite of good. What I'm gonna say.
So I agree with what you're saying. We'll get into what I was gonna say anyway. But yeah, in terms of like critics, like I don't see there's not much here, man. Like there's just not much here. So I might even I wonder even if just on like name, like Paul Schrader is gonna get like a somewhat like a bump, just a name respect bump. So you said 53?
I did say 53.
Yeah, I'll go 54.
Damn you. We were actually far off. We were harsher on it than Metacritic was. I think maybe what you said about name recognition is right, because it has a 63, which I think is perhaps giving the movie too much credit. Credit where it is not due. So clearly we have a stance on this movie. Aidan, though, as the winner, you get to tell us what you thought first. Non-spoiler reaction.
Yeah, so I think this movie is bad, as I've already said. And this is actually my first Paul Schrader film. I've not seen First Reformed. I've not seen The Card Counter. I've only seen part of Taxi Driver, movie is written. So I actually think this is the first full Paul Schrader, either directing or writing, whatever, film that I've seen. And not a good introduction, I will say. Like, I believe people when they say he's great. I believe you, and I'm sure when I get to those other films, I'll be like, wow, that's great. This one is bad. This is, for someone who is like started as a writer, my biggest problems with this movie are the writing, which I think not only is incredibly on the nose, but also very superficial and unable to like delve into the kind of like topical theme of redemption that it's getting into, and deals with it in frankly like a stupid way. Like it just with like a there's like a small caveat where it's like there are actually a couple scenes where I'm like, okay, is there something interesting going on here? But I don't think so. There's not enough for me to say that. Like the directing I don't think is good either. I don't even like the performances very much in this movie. I think Sigourney Weaver is great. I think she's not very good in this movie. I don't think that Joel Edgerton is great in this movie either. I don't think Quintessa Swindell is great in this movie. I think that some of the cinematography is cool, but I also would say that like at a certain point the framing with the architecture of a house or a garden is like not the most impressive thing. There are specific things with the directing I like, namely like the way having to do with like the way characters are looking and like the focus. So there's some directing cinematography things I like. This is a very weird movie though that has this strange tone that makes it hard to get into. There's so many weird details. Yeah, we'll get into it, but yeah, so this is like a 2-star movie for me, and I would not recommend this. I don't think people would like this. In fact, my mom came partway through, and her only remarks were, "That was a weird movie."
Yeah.
and sometimes she'll say that to a movie that I think is good, but I am fully behind her in this case here. I think that was a weird movie in a bad way.
Yeah, Mrs. Aiden's mom, that is correct. This is a weird movie. I will say, I think the second half is more interesting. Not necessarily better,
Sure.
but more happens, more diverse things start happening than at the first half of this movie. I watched this last night later than I should have started it. So I was quite tired for the first half, and the fact that this is, I mean, its usual style is slow, but God, this was slow and dumb. So like, trying to not sleep through the first half was difficult. It was quite a challenge. Somehow I got a second wind for the second half, and I was able to actually like stay awake the whole time and kind of be more attentive. But it's really hard to pay attention to stuff like this. This feels like ChatGPT took in all of First Reformed and all of Card Counter and then had to come up with a new Paul Schrader script. Like, and it's funny that like he's got this trilogy thing going on in the last two movies, because he's not stopped making films since he started directing. Like, there are films like 2015, 2014, 2013, he has films that came out. Just nobody talks about them because they're bad. Like, no one likes them. And so, yeah, so he took... It really does feel like he's just found this kind of character he likes writing about and is just doing just the laziest, lowest common denominator versions of, like, retelling the same story over and over again, but with each time less nuance. Like, I didn't like the Card Counter. I rewatched it for this, and it's worse than First Reformed, but I think better than this one. Yeah, so I'll get into some more specifics. Yeah, the writing's bad. It is strange that for someone who did start out as a writer and has some prolific writing put out projects, that it's this bad. It's quite obvious stuff. The characters just like the characters who are supposed to be like super knowledgeable in certain things, like gardening, are journaling about like the basics, and I'm like, who are you telling this to other than obviously me, the audience, who knows nothing? Yeah, super on the nose. I think the conceit is quite interesting. For like that's what hooked me is like the logline for this movie, that, you know, former Proud Boy or like Nazi man is working on what is essentially, I think I read somewhere that it was a plantation. I don't know if that's for sure, but like an ex-plantation, working for powerful or rich old white lady, and has to work with her grand niece who is half black. That's interesting. I think there's something there.
There's potential for themes to be explored there for sure.
And like, he just does nothing with it. There's like, it's one of those movies that's allergic to conflict, where scenes with conflict basically baked into them have it removed for some reason. Like,
yeah.
Like I was like, oh, the conflict is so obvious, and then they diffuse it immediately, and then have to come up with.
There's one point where there's a big reveal towards the end of the movie, like probably 3/4 of the way in, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a big like bomb. Arguably, the entire movie has been leading up to this, resolved in like not only does like they don't care when it first happens, and then it is resolved in like 3 scenes, and they're just like, yeah, we're good.
That was the most conflict there was, and it was resolved almost immediately. I like the one where there's a very obvious, like, he's making a request that he probably should not be able to make as a felon, and he's making it to a police officer, and the police officer says, like, yeah, sure, I can do that.
No, and he's literally just like, yeah, you've been such a nice guy, like, I'll do that for you, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think maybe that's a bad example, because I think later it's revealed that might not be entirely true, but that was very funny to me, just being like, wow, we're really not doing conflict in this movie. Okay. What else? The directing is terrible. I think he got terrible performances out of good actors, which is interesting. It's just like it's supposed to be about this central relationship, and I don't buy how that started or continued. No. I was like, oh, they're already interested in each other?
Yeah.
and they're still interested in each other as it continues on.
Also,
okay.
We'll get into it, but there's one line that Joel Edgerton character says at the end where I out loud was like, "What?" Why?
Great stuff. The only positive I can give this is the visual direction. I think Paul Schrader surprisingly has a good eye for some pretty good cinematography. It's not the best it's been. I think it's worse than some of his other stuff. And there's some pretty like generic, one shot, reverse shot kind of situations for conversations. But there's like one shot in particular, maybe two, that I was like, oh, that's good staging, or they did something interesting with the lighting. I'll get into the specifics later, but yeah, bad movie. Struggled to stay awake, and I think it's dumb and not worth your time. Would not recommend. I think 2 is like a pretty solid place to give it, maybe even 1.5. I think it's just, it's really bad. Aidan, I think we have a spoiler warning.
Pew 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 pew.
Thank
That's
you.
Spoiler warning.
And I lost the game, the Predacritic Game, which means that I have to give a quick 2-minute synopsis for the movie. What happened in under 2 minutes? This should not be hard.
Not
in
as
typical Schrader.
We always say this, but like not that much happened in this movie. I feel like we say that more often than not, where we're like, actually not that much happened.
In typical Schrader fashion, though, really like nothing happens in this movie. Yeah. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. So Nazi boy works on a plantation for a rich white lady, and her niece, her mom. Oh God, the grandniece's mom died. So her rich white lady's sister's daughter died. So she has no one left. And she's been getting into drugs. So she takes her on and makes her be the apprentice for a Nazi boy. Now, grandniece is half black, so obviously there should be tension there, right? And he's like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'll take an apprentice. And he teaches her the ways of gardening and flowers. And then they kiss, or she kisses him or something at one point after she's on drugs or something. And they're caught by rich white lady and kicked out of the plantation wherever. They hop from motel to motel until at one point grandniece sees Nazi boy's tattoos that are like super obviously racist, like Nazi flags, the Confederate flag, like every single symbol you could think of is on his back and torso. She sees it. Understandably, she gets upset at him. Less understandably, she forgives him and wants to have sex with him. And they do. And then she has a boyfriend / drug dealer who is mean. Nazi boy threatens him. In retaliation, drug dealer and his buddy destroy the gardens. So then Nazi boy comes back. He scares drug dealer and bashes in his knee. And they live happily ever after, Nazi boy and grandniece. As husband and wife.
Which is, to be clear, that was the line that I out loud went like, what? when Joel Edgerton goes up to Sigourney Weaver and he's like, Maya is the grandniece. Maya and I will be living on the grounds together as husband and wife. Why? Just have them live together. Why do they need to be?
Oh man, that was so funny. We can get to this right away, but sorry,
I will say there's actually an important piece of context. Joel Edgerton was sleeping with Sigourney Weaver as well, and so there was like a jealousy thing at play there too.
Yeah, thank you. He is a former Proud Boy because he was an informant. He informed on his people and killed them. So he was really out of the Proud Boy stuff at one point. Although one could argue, does it ever leave you? maybe the movie should have explored that idea. But
so the one thing that like I thought, like there are some moments where I thought it was going to lean into exploring it, and there are two particular moments where, so first of all, when he first approaches the drug dealer guy and his Hispanic friend, he immediately calls the Hispanic guy a slur, like just like right off the hop. And so I was like, okay, is the movie trying to explore that, like given like the lowest hanging fruit, easiest circumstances, he just reverts to like racism? Like is the movie trying to go there? And then the other part I was thinking of is near the end when they go and like confront the drug dealer and the other guy, and like I was like, okay, so it's also exploring like given the first opportunity he just reverts to like violence. But like it doesn't like the ending undercuts what that would be, because they're just like
completely
together dancing. Like, and so
she's
like if that was there,
and she just accepts all of his actions. She's just like, yeah, okay, sure. It's like you'd think that him going violent mode on, that was really dumb, going violent mode on her people she knows, you'd think she would react to that. And she even
when they're pulling up to the house and she talks to her friend and she's like, hey man, how's it going? And he's like, oh, I'm Maya, I haven't seen you in a while. And then Joel Edgerton's like, and smacks him. and then Maya's just like stone-faced, nothing.
Because she was in on it. She acts like she was best friends with this guy. I thought he was innocent. And then he's like also, smashed on the back, like unconscious.
The staging of that scene, the guy has to literally not be able to see Joel Edgerton for that to work. Because Joel Edgerton walks right in front of him and comes around. And then, like, clearly, like, holding a gun and 3 feet away from him the entire time, smacks him on the back of the head. Like,
so dumb. Yeah, so that's a whole thing. And she's, like, he even hands her a gun. And she considers shooting them for a second and ultimately does not. But, like, all of that, like, it's clearly an invitation to be like, what are we doing here? Why are you going to be violent? And, yeah, just at every opportunity choosing the less interesting choice.
It's also... It is hilarious that, like, they have a line earlier, just because we were already talking about this, they have a line earlier where they're like, yeah, you know, like every proud boy, every skinhead in the county, like the moment they hear your name, you're dead. They're coming after you, and then nothing happens. Nothing becomes of that. Yeah. It's like you're saying, like another source of conflict that could exist, and it's like, no, we're actually not doing that.
Feels like a Chekhov's gun kind of situation that we just like a lot of those lying around. We just have a storage of Chekhov's guns over here. We're just waiting to be used. I want to talk about, we kind of brushed past it, the husband and wife thing. So just to give further clarification, so he is 48 and she is 26. Now,
at
all
26,
consenting adults,
you are an adult. Well,
fine. You know what? If that's what it is, fine. But her line, it makes me laugh more than his. Her being Sigourney Weaver's line.
Yeah.
He says, we're going to be husband and wife. Her reaction is, that's obscene. It's supposed to be like, I think it's supposed to be that it's obscene that he's marrying someone who is not the same skin color. I think that's
because
her implication. But I'm like, no, you're right for a different reason.
There's also, they're right, because they, like, he isn't in an inherently paternalistic figure to her. And, like, that's what it's, like, set up to be. And then suddenly they just have, like, a romantic interaction, like, halfway through the movie. But also on that point, Sigourney Weaver says something, like, I forget what it is, but it's, like, saying, like, she's not pure. Like, that's how she frames. It's right near the beginning of the movie.
She's
so it's
definitely racist.
Right. Yeah. So, like,
sorry.
No, I think, but just to be like, just to clarify that, like, so I think you're right that is what she's reacting to, but it's like, and like the framing of that scene
is so funny.
The framing of that scene where like the point I feel like is supposed to be like, she just doesn't get their love, like she's just against their love.
That's obscene. like. Kind of.
You're kind of right, yeah.
I think you're right. It's you know, age gap discourse kind of like if they're consenting adults, we can't really say anything. You could have your opinion on that and be like, that's kind of weird. But when it does come down to like he was a mentor figure, that gets into territory of like I don't know,
And
guys.
to be clear, it's not to say that you can't depict such a relationship in a film. You absolutely can. But this movie wholeheartedly and uncritically endorses it without exploring like any angle of it. Like, and it renders Maya as just like a tool, essentially. Like
As head over heels in love with this guy who, as far as I know, has no redeeming qualities except, I guess, knowledge about plants.
yeah.
Maybe you
And
like that, but you know.
she also doesn't know anything about him, like, until she finds out he's a Nazi, essentially. Which, like,
Yeah.
the first scene where she finds out, I know we're jumping all over the place, but this is just like
No, it's fine. This works.
the first scene where she finds out that he's a Nazi, like, and she is just walking casually beside him, and she's like, I saw your tattoos. Like, just like, what? And then he's just like, okay, well, like, those are my tattoos. And she's like, were you trying? Did you want me to see them? And then he's like, let's go over here. And then, in fairness, in the next scene, she finally is, like, upset. She starts yelling at him. But then we arrive at, after he does nothing, like, nothing to change this conflict. Like, he doesn't have to prove anything to her. He, like, says a couple lines back at the motel or whatever. Like, one of the hardest scenes to watch I've seen in a while, in which she comes into his room and is like, I really want to take my clothes off. No, like, I really want to take my clothes off. That's actually so fucking hard. Okay, one detail I like of this scene, however, when she takes her clothes off, she, like a normal person would, takes her shirt off first. He takes his pants off first. That's a decent little detail there, that he's actually more protective of what's on his torso than than his genitals.
That
I
makes
guess.
sense.
Which
Which
is like a nice detail there, but a bad scene.
Yeah, I want to touch on two things. One, the scene that you mentioned where they're inside, kind of like a cafeteria area, let's say, of the garden after she acknowledged that she saw the tattoos. That is like the only real scene in this movie where her reaction seems genuine. Like, she seems sick of like what she's seen, and she's like really quite conflicted. And I was like, oh, we're acting now. We like I don't think it's her fault at all, but I think like that is the scene where maybe it's just like it's in the culture where like this is really real. I don't know, but so that scene is like actually good. She like throws the water and like throws it at the chair. Like, I was like, oh, this is great. And ultimately, I just the thing with I'm still stuck on the age gap thing. Like, it feels like this was written by like a horny 80-year-old man who is like, man, wouldn't it be nice to bone down with some younger chicks? Like, that's what it feels like. Because literally, like, the girl is Maya, has almost no character and is just like infatuated with this guy who there's nothing there.
And I will say, picking up on your point of this is the one time where she seems like she has any kind of character, that ties into, I have a point here where I said everyone acts the same, and I mean that everyone talks and acts exactly the same, and this scene is like an anomaly. Like, this is one in which like she didn't. So I was thinking the whole movie, I was like, okay, is that like the style? Like, the style is that like everyone kind of talks in this like kind of monotone, sort of like languid almost way where like they don't seem to care about anything that they're talking about. But then like we get to this scene and it's like, no, okay, the characters do care about things, so like why is that only present sometimes? Like,
yeah, and I think if you revisit visit the former two Schrader films, you'll see that like characters do sound different and they do act different because they're actual characters. But yeah, just like the girl is like throwing herself at him. Not great. I was gonna say, oh right, you said that so this question that Schrader keeps toying with in his films are, can we be forgiven for our past? And that's what this like informal trilogy is about. Men who did bad things, varying degrees of bad things. This is maybe the most vile. Like, Card Counter was pretty bad, but like this is getting like, now we're like really bad territory of bad things people could have done. And also, like, simultaneously, the least amount of trying to forgive oneself or move forward. Like, we start the movie and we're just at some point supposed to realize that he is not a Nazi anymore. That the tattoos are remnants of, it's not me anymore. That was my past self.
Yeah.
And like I think that's why he has gardeners who work for him who are people of color, because it's just, that's the only signal we're supposed to get that he's cool with people now, that he's not a Nazi. Like, he doesn't ever try to fix himself. He doesn't take any steps to change himself. He stays the same the whole movie. It's other people who have to change to realize he's okay now.
Yes.
He's being rehabilitated.
And
That's
anyone
crazy.
who isn't treating him like that is portrayed as unreasonable. Like, anyone, like the extent to which this movie explores the theme of redemption is just like, nah, that's the old me. Like, that's really like other than, and like you said, like, it doesn't show like steps he had to take. It doesn't show like how his past followed him. It doesn't show like how like some people are never going to forgive, and maybe they're right for that. Maybe you can forgive yourself, but you can't expect other people to forgive you. Like ideas like that, though, might be interesting to explore. But just nothing there. It's also like the way that it links, like, this movie is clearly trying to link it to the phenomenon of someone said something racist on Twitter 10 years ago that is being released, because there's a specific line where Maya is talking about, like, they're talking about, like, well, everything is permanent online. It's like you're like, it's like you're stuck in the past. Like, it's just like a permanent representation of who you are. And then Sigourney Weaver says something like, I'm sure you've posted some bullshit on there, Maya. It doesn't say it like that. But like, and she's just like, damn, I have. Like, that's like the end of the scene.
That was, I think that scene, the implication was she knew about, that was the scene where she's like, I know about you two. I know you guys fucked, you know?
Well, there's
and
that
so she's
too.
Trying to like, because she was like, I'm sure you posted some lewd photographs on the internet, huh? Whore. Like she was just like slut shaming her kind of thing.
But I do think the other implication there is, like, the other thematic point is supposed to be like, even if she used to do that, that's the old her, which is just like how even if Nazi guy used to be a Nazi, that's the old him. Like, I do think that that's the linkage it's trying to make there, which is very dumb. And like, that is like how a 15-year-old like would address that problem in that simplistic of term, as someone did something that is maybe questionable, but they don't do that thing anymore, so problem solved. Like,
he doesn't even do anything to make I almost called them by their real name, Maya. He doesn't do anything to make Maya forgive him. She throws herself and takes her clothes off in front of him. Like, that's it. Like, it's resolved because she gets over it, which is insane. And there's other things that like not only, like, if you thought him being a Nazi was bad enough, like, just having racist ideas and wanting to tattoo that on your skin, like, that's one thing. He also murdered 9 people or something crazy. We're just like not even gonna address that. Or at some point he turned on them, and I'm not even sure we know why. Again, this thing, like, he has a very problematic past, but we're not going to see.
There's one scene that implies, like, the slightest amount. It's when he kills a guy in his home, and then he sees presumably the guy's wife and child, and he doesn't kill them. That's because he has a wife and daughter, perhaps. Maybe I think that's supposed to be what it is.
And he just suddenly gets his humanity in a flashback. Like, that's the kind of weird choices this movie likes to make. And also, like, the daughter thing. So we know he has a daughter out there. So it's weird that that's a thing that we have to, like, contend with. He has a daughter, and he feels bad about that, and that's something he has to live with, that he'll never see his daughter again. And then, lo and behold, he forms a relationship with a girl who is probably not much older than his daughter,
Right.
and the fact that he is canoodling with Sigourney Weaver, who is his boss. There's clearly weird dynamics, like weird power dynamics,
like,
and like also like 1 second, just
yeah,
not just power dynamics, but like daddy issues kind of thing,
Yeah.
maybe like where or mommy daddy issues. I don't know, like just weird things going on, and we're just gonna be like, nope, that's normal, that's okay, and clearly rich thematic ground that again, not even gonna bother dealing with.
yeah. Oh fuck, I don't remember what I was gonna say, but I do have another point, which is that I have because I couldn't remember it well, I've struggled to articulate why I think Jojo Rabbit is a very dumb movie, and I think that it is dumb in the exact same way that this movie is, because this movie uses like to an arguably lesser extent, but almost the same thing actually. Where like this movie's argument, and this is the very on the nose metaphor, where it's like a seed will be a Nazi if it's raised under Nazi conditions. If you take a plant, and basically the argument is that like you take a seed and it has this potential, but how it turns out depends on like its conditioning and like what it's subjected to, and it's like maybe it can be righted and it can be rebuilt. Like they replant the garden at the end. You can replant your garden. That's like the idea. You can change. Even Nazi seeds can turn to a non-Nazi seed. And so it's it's this view of like it's this view of bigotry and like vile violence, like horrible oppressive hatred that completely shifts the responsibility of it to no one. Because if that's true, then nobody is truly hateful. Like nobody is like that. And so where is this coming from? And if you don't have another place to put the blame on, such as like an institution, if you like examine institutions that force people into like filter bubbles that and like echo chambers of hatred and stuff, like maybe there's something there. Ultimately, people are responsible for what they're doing though. And so like by saying like no one is born hateful, and they just like learn that shit and they can just be like not, like it's the same thing as how in Jojo Rabbit they're like the Nazi general is like gay, and they're like, okay, but like he was just taught to be a Nazi general, like he was taught to hide himself. Do you know what he would have had to do to become a general in the Third Reich? Like, what are the things he would have had to do? And so you're not blaming him for that? You're not going to hold him to fault? Like, that is a stupid fucking analysis of, like, hatred. And that's the same thing going on in this movie.
Spittin'. Yeah. I think, it's the fact that, like, we're just going to have a movie where former Nazi is just sad the whole time and has to be forgiven for past actions. And I think what would have been more interesting is someone who hasn't changed, or is, he has these violent impulses, and all of that is just resolved when we get there. Like, I think the stuff with the drug dealer is an example of where the violence returns, but even that, he is not violent because he chooses the other, like the higher ground in both cases. I think a better movie would have been where he actually does do the violent things. For once, like me, like endorsing violence, I would think this movie should have been more violent because it's rather tame for a movie that is talking about hatred and someone who has done terrible things,
It's also, it's like, it's uneven, like, view of, like, who gets to be redeemed. Like, the drug dealer, who is nowhere near as bad as a person as our main character, to be 100% clear, even though he's clearly done awful things. But it's like, he gets kneecapped, and that's the way it has to go.
Yeah.
But, like, you know what I mean? Like, if he really learned that lesson, would he not... Like, there's a weird thing going on with, like, gender. Like, they're trying to do some kind of commentary on gender where it's like... So the reason that he turns from violence is because he sees, like, a woman. He sees a woman and a child. he has that line where he says, "I had never thought about women specifically until I met Maya and Sigourney Weaver," or whatever the fuck that is.
I know.
And then,
So funny, by the way. I never thought about women. What? You had a wife. You had a wife and child. What do you mean you didn't think about women? That doesn't make sense. Like, sorry, if this is a character who isn't a heterosexual male, like there's reasons why that could be true, but not this situation. The character you've created, that doesn't make sense. Sorry, continue your point.
And so, and then in the end, the people who he exacts violence against, who I think we can agree the movie's framing this as justified, that he, like, kneecaps these two guys. Like, those are men. And so it is almost this idea of, like, I think this movie, I think you can make a good argument, and I don't have the whole thing pieced together, that this movie is, like, just really infantilizing women as well, as just an object in which, like, men can base their morality off of, like,
like not just that, but they're either an object or like a bitch, like a terrible, domineering, evil person. Like, those are your two options. There's not. I guess there's his nice gardening lady, but like his she seems more like of an equal to him, but I think she does work for him. That woman who has like a couple of scenes with him. That's, like, the closest to a real person, but she doesn't have anything to do in the movie. Like, she doesn't involve herself in the plot. So that doesn't really count.
The most women can do is just be a catalyst for men to change. Like, women just, like, exist for the whims of men in this world. And whereas, like, and, like, violence... Not that I'm saying the movie should have gotten violent against women. That's not the point I'm making. But, like... I do think, like, it's pretty clear that it's just so bizarre that the impetus for change is just, like, he saw a woman, and so, like, that changes him, but, like, he can brutalize a man at the end. It's a weird, like, it's an inconsistent kind of strange view of, I think it's an underbaked gender thing going on here.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the scene where the Nazis, or the drug dealers ruin the flowers and put the Nazi sign on his
How do
house.
they know?
How do they know? Yeah. Does he know? Does he know?
Does he know? Yeah.
Does he know? Because, like, he never said that. I guess he said the racist word, so maybe they put two and two together, but that's a stretch.
Because, like, when he first confronts them, they call him Proud Boy, and I took that at that point as, like, okay, he's clearly racist. He kind of looks like a racist, so, like, sure, like, I get that they're just calling him that, but then the implication later is that, like, they just know he's a Nazi, and, like, how do they know that?
And it's not like they could have learned it from anyone, because Maya didn't know up until after that scene. And then didn't have contact with them, as far as we know, right? Like, she couldn't have told them that he is a Nazi.
And why would she? Because she clearly is pining after.
If the Gonzalez one, if he knew that, if he was involved in the Proud Boy stuff, that would have explained why he knew, and ire against. You following?
No.
You're making confused. Okay, the main drug dealer, the one who I think is white, if he was one of the Proud Boys, that would explain why he knew, and why, like, also would be the Chekhov's gun for the earlier thing.
Right.
But, like, they just didn't do that.
Right,
you know?
That does make sense.
But yeah, like, I don't know why they knew that at all.
Did we miss him in a flashback?
Or where they worked.
Is he in a flashback or something? Yeah, they also they don't treat each other like they know each other when they talk.
No, I'm just saying that's what it should have been. That's clearly like, kind of like the obvious quick fix is, like, he does know, and it's because they have a shared history. I just looked at this on my notes, and I do want to talk about it. It was the no conflict thing we kind of already touched on. But man, when he asked that cop, "Can you bully the drug dealers for me?" and the cop is just like, you know what? You deserve this. You've been a good boy. You deserve one for you. And I guess he probably lied, right? Because I don't think he did that. And then the new guy's like, that didn't happen.
No, I think it must have happened because when he goes and approaches the drug dealer, he says, "This is your second warning," and the drug dealer is like, "Yeah," as if he did receive the first warning.
Okay, so
So like,
why would you just accept the whims? Again, there's potential for commentary, like if you per se wanted to interrogate the morality of the police department and perhaps some intermingling of ideologies between the Nazi people and the police people.
Yeah.
That's something to explore. And instead it seems like no, he just thinks this is a cool dude who's actually changed. Again, people just accepting that someone has changed. This is a movie where someone has changed in the past and everyone else just needs to get on the same page. Yeah. We don't have to learn any hard truths, except that for us, I guess, the hard truth is maybe this Nazi person isn't a Nazi anymore. But I don't think that's enough.
Yeah, also, just to loop back to the writing, like, there are some, like hilariously on the nose things where I'm just like, okay, so, like, one thing is, like, she just does drugs. Well, this isn't on the nose, but this is just, like, a superficiality thing. Like, she just does drugs. Like, not heroin. She's not addicted to, like, crack. She just does nebulous drugs. And they're always
like 80s Reagan era, like, war on drugs, capital D drugs.
Yeah.
Non-specific.
Yeah.
Very clearly, like, I think this movie just shows, like, the importance of research.
Yeah.
Like, or putting effort into building the world of your story. Sorry, continue your thought, though.
There, like, yeah, I forget, there's one line in particular where it's like, what, I'm sure you're doing drugs? Throw those drugs out the car. And I know that they might be in your waistband or whatever. And then she throws them out and she's like, fuck! Which is like the first time.
Yeah.
It's like the first time she acts even a little erratically in the movie, because when it says she's on drugs, it's like, is she? Like, what about the way she's acting suggests that that's what's happening here?
Like, she's just, like, dizzy and stuff, and I was like, I thought you might have, like, what's the like, vertigo. Like, she acts like she has vertigo, and she's like, whoa, like Lucille from Arrested Development. That's what that was giving me. Also, yeah, the drug thing was a very strange choice for this movie. I don't know why they decided to throw that in. It feels also bad. Like, I feel like maybe you shouldn't have done that.
It also winds up being another mechanism for him to just infantilize her. Like, he just becomes like her sponsor that is like, nope, no drugs, you're gonna throw up now. Nope, sleep in this bed, you're gonna do exactly what I say. Like, at no point does this feel like a relationship. Even after they have that very awkward sex scene and drive through a tunnel of flowers.
Driving through a tunnel of flowers was something else.
Yeah.
Like, there's been some interesting, like, scenes of magical kind of surrealism in these movies that he does, but this just came out of nowhere. Like, it was a hard cut into the scene. Was it a dream, weirdly. I guess?
It's edited
I think it must have been a dream. Sorry, yeah.
It's also, they act so, like, out of character. Like, they just start screaming out the window, and it's like, maybe Maya does that. Maybe. But, like, our main Nazi boy certainly does not start screaming out the window, and it feels so weird when he does. Like,
I think the idea is, I think it's a dream, or, like, this is a surrealist, expressionist visualization of their connection. And so she's kind of more carefree, and he's learning to let loose, which is, again, not at all what the rest of the movie is about, because he is not, like, uptight in that way.
Yeah.
Maybe uptight in terms of racial ideology, but, and she is, like, she doesn't, like, teach him how to party. Like, that's not what this is. Or, like, teach him how to let loose. Like, that's not what this is. And it just feels like he's, again, like the AI parody of himself. Like, I need this in the movie. There needs to be a scene where weird shit happens so people can talk about it. it didn't feel like it was grounded in anything real.
And okay, so to move on to other on the nose things, the use of t-shirts in this movie is hilarious. I don't know if you picked up on this, but when Maya first arrives, and our implication, all we know about her at this point is like she's like fallen in with the wrong crowd, and she pulls up in this like tie-dye shirt that says like "good vibes" on it, which is just like
it was good vibes only or bad vibes only, like something like that. Sorry.
Something like that. But then, okay, so then there are two other very funny shirts that are just like on those like, so how do we get to the core of this character? Oh, their t-shirt. So in one of the white supremacist flashbacks, one of the characters is just wearing a shirt that says in bold white text "White Power." Like,
yeah. Just to really, in case you weren't sure, I know the other one you're gonna say, the cop. Right?
Yeah, so the cop who is like the good guy, who's like a progressive guy who believes in rehabilitation, is wearing a shirt that is like the future. No, it's "We should all be feminists." That's the shirt he's wearing. It's like,
why would you wear that?
Why would you be wearing this?
Just like, oh man, is that Schrader like crowning himself as feminist? Because this movie is doing anything but that.
It's certainly not. Yeah.
Okay, we talked about Flower Highway, more like Highway.
Nice. Maybe that's what it's actually about. They just both are on. They're on nebulous.
Maybe she did make him
like.
Like, can you imagine if she made him do the drugs?
Yeah,
that's way more interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I think about the cop. When that happened, I was like, oh, he has stakes now. That should have been way earlier. That should have been Act 1 shit. Like, here is the cop who could ruin everything because he knows. He knows. Does he know? So I think that's, again, yeah. This movie is really bad. Sorry, that was weird. I just trying to think of, like, anything we haven't touched on. I guess, okay, I'll get to my one last point. So, the last two other movies, Schrader's been creating these characters who journal a lot, and even apparently the taxi driver guy journals too, but I forget about that. So,
sure.
They like to journal. Now, First Reformed, the journaling makes total sense and is like ingrained in the character. I won't spoil much about that, but it's the conceit is it's a character who's having a crisis of faith, and he's kind of like, I see it as like he's turning inward instead of seeking help. Like going to a therapist, for example. He's putting his ideas down on paper as what he thinks is therapy, but I think is more like an echo chamber, which furthers his descent into not madness, but like that idea, right?
Sure.
I think it really works there. And in each subsequent film, it makes less sense. Card Counter, I don't think there's any explanation at all why he's journaling. He just journals. And I think it's Schrader's kind of lazy way of getting characters to have voiceovers, which is also not necessary. There's a scene in Card Counter that I found was so funny where I could not tell you what the context was, but Ty Sheridan says something that Oscar Isaac's character disagrees with, and Oscar Isaac makes he's a great actor, so he makes a face at him, and he's like, "The fuck did you just say?" And the narration goes, "The fuck did you just say?" Like exactly, like doubling down on what is so obvious by the look. Like, acting exists for a reason.
Is the idea there that he wrote "What the fuck did you say" in his journal?
I do not know. I guess, but like it's character narration / journal. I always see the narration as journaling because when he journals, he narrates, and then he narrates the rest of it. Yeah. So I think, I don't know. It must have been journaling, but yeah, it was literally like, I know what he's thinking because he just acted.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Like, Oscar Isaac did a great face to convey exactly the meaning. I was like, why would you do that? So it was dumb, not explained. This one, they try to explain it. He says, in a throwaway line, he says, "This was great for my therapy process," or like, loneliness or something. Like he says why
Yeah.
he does it, and it was because of being in the witness protection program or whatever. And I think, like, first of all, that's introduced way too late. I've already been asking for over an hour why he's journaling, and what he is journaling about never makes sense.
Well,
it's sometimes about his personal life, and then sometimes gardening, but the gardening stuff is like stuff he learned in a textbook.
Yeah.
And then I'm asking, why? Why are you journaling that?
Well, the function in the script is that the journal is just an opportunity to just tell the audience things, and in a very on-the-nose way. So, like, he can deliver the metaphor of redemption and change and growth and, like, being raised and conditioned in a certain way through the journal. Like, that's what a large portion of it is. And then it's like, yeah, I've, like... Because no one gives any information away with their performance, because that's how this movie's directed, that no one cares about anything. Like, that the only way we can learn about, like, what characters are thinking and feeling is just, like, being told. And so, like, that's the function the journal winds up having in this movie.
I think you're right about, like, the metaphor delivery. And, like, there's such an obvious way of conveying gardening things and using them as metaphors. I think maybe there's one too many, because there's several scenes where it's just talking about the process of gardening, but he's explaining it to someone who doesn't know. So, which, if he's journaling, that doesn't make sense, because he knows, so why would he be telling himself what he already knows? Now, they've established that he is mentoring Maya. Very clearly, the way, like, you deliver this information is he's teaching her. But then why is he journaling about gardening? And sometimes, like, rudimentary gardening stuff. There was something so early on where he explains something super obvious, and I was like, I didn't even need to hear this. I know that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but, like, so doesn't make any sense.
There's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there actually is one scene I like in this movie. That there might be more than one, but there's one scene I distinctly remember liking, and it's when it's right around after when Maya has first arrived, and he's showing them the dirt. Like, he gets them all to, like, pick up the dirt, and he gets them to smell it. And he actually says he tells an interesting story about it, where it's like, you smell that's plants, that's animals, that's nature, that's whatever. And then he goes in to talk about, I forget exactly what it is, but he says, like, from like the industrial era, this soil was, like, rendered like, nutritionless. Like, there's nothing left in it.
Devoid of...
Right.
Everything, yeah.
And then they tried to use artificial fertilizers, and that only made it worse. And so that's actually an interesting idea of, like, the conditions of being raised, and how, like, there's artificial imposition on natural tendencies of human. And you could even, in a better movie, you could link that to, like, institutionalized and, like, highly industrialized, like, society, like, creating, like, certain types of people, like, you and creating the conditions for this type of people to grow. Like, if you actually make an effort to link it to that idea, then that there's potential for something interesting there. You still need to do more, I think, but so, like, I like that scene, and I actually noted it down, like, that's a good scene. And then they don't do anything with it. So it ultimately doesn't mean much, but yeah.
I think also that scene reminds me that, again, in a movie devoid of conflict, like, they've just sanded off the edges for this movie until there's, like, nothing. Maya is totally okay with gardening. Like,
yeah. Again,
this is easy setup. The dumbest filmmaker, or sorry, that's mean, but like the most obvious setup is guy who doesn't want to mentor someone for, you know, the obvious reason is he's racist, but maybe that's too simple. And person who doesn't want to be mentored, and they have to learn. Maybe he avoids it because it is so obvious, but, like, they're just so okay with what they're doing, and there's nothing else to latch onto anyways. So,
and if you're gonna subvert, like, the archetypical story, you need to do it in a way that gives something and produces something else, like some sort of other thematic resonance or conflict, like, which this movie doesn't.
I think
do.
I think the journaling too. I had an idea was that if you needed the journal thing for your informal trilogy, like I think the idea of like like a log, like a lab log, would
Sure.
make more sense. Like progress on the flowers, and periodically do that. I don't. Maybe there's not a great explanation if he was doing that. Why he starts talking about his personal life in there, but I
Yeah.
mean, the journal seems superfluous to begin with. Like, why are you doing that at all? We can probably move on from writing. I guess the only other thing I have is cinematography. It was nice sometimes.
Wasn't I sometimes? I don't like the. It's hard to put my finger on exactly what it is, but the color grading of this movie, I am not a fan of, and I see it in a lot of other things. And it's actually like, I think it has to do with the way they contrast it. I think that the shadows are pulled down a lot. I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like to me, that the shadows have been pulled down a lot, and like the color is also kind of muted, which I don't think it's not the end of the world,
It's
because like
definitely desaturated.
yeah, there are like spots of color that I think work well, but it has this like really, it winds up having this like, the word I'm thinking of is grainy, but that's a misleading word because I don't mean like film grain, but like it winds up having like this like gritty kind of look, and it like things things look dirty, and I don't really, and I just don't like it. It's just a personal thing. I particularly see it in like kind of like like the modern gritty action movie often colors their movies this way. Like there's particularly one with is her name Allison Janney? Allison Jennings? Allison Jennings. She was in one recently, like a more or less subpar action movie where she's like a retired CIA agent or whatever that has to track down this girl or whatever, and it was colored the same way, and I don't, every time I see it I'm like, no, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But and then also in terms of like, sorry, to compliment the things I like. What I like is that there's a lot of, and I think that this blends with like, because I'm fairly unfamiliar with this style, but I think it blends with like the transcendental style where there's a lot of just characters, like we get to see them like really like walk all the way up a path and come through it and sit down, and like nothing really happens, but we just get to see that whole journey, and it like creates this kind of, not hypnotic, but like sort of like languid, like flow, like unfolding and unraveling sort of feel. And I do like that. I like that there's a lot of just like walking through the garden of like a really just slow shot that's just following them, and so that's something I appreciate. But
it's interesting that you bring up transcendental style, which he wrote a book on. Schrader wrote a book on, and he does very clearly in First Reformed. But I'd say with each film, it feels less and less like that style.
Sure.
Like,
well, I'm not very familiar with how you do it, so that's just my impression based off this being my only Schrader film.
A lot of it, well, the idea of transcendental, I'll try to be brief on this, is it's slow and not a lot is happening. So often the idea is they compose they're often very beautiful frames, and it's usually in that aspect ratio that First Reformed is in, and the action inside the scene is pretty muted. Like characters aren't super, the acting isn't super like emotion forward. It's all kind of like muted emotionally, and a lot of it is on either sticks, like tripods for the layman, or if there is dolly movement, very slow, very controlled. Having seen this and the card encounter,
this movie generally does that. Like that is true about this movie, that it's on sticks or dolly. Like I would say like 95, if not 100% of the time. I can't think of a shot that isn't.
It might be transcendental. It feels less like the transcendental films that I've seen. Not just Schrader. I watched Ida from 2013. It won maybe Best International Feature. That's a really good transcendental one, I think. Anyways, one shot that I really liked was in one of the motel rooms. I think it's before the I want you to take your clothes off scene, like just moments before, and she's sitting alone in her room, and the lights through the blinds are lowering.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
It creates this really nice light,
and it's like an
pattern.
infinite. It's like an infinite kind of thing. It's almost like a surrealist moment where it's just keeps going even longer than a window would realistically like.
And like I have no idea. There's no reason for that to happen. Like there's no logical light that is doing that as far as I can think of. Like nothing would be doing that. It would be horizontal, right? And I think that it does so much. It really spoke to me. I was like, oh, that's a really nice shot.
Yeah.
I'm sure the moment is just a character contemplating. Like it's not much deeper than that. But it looks so nice. You put a lot of effort into that. So A+ for that.
Yeah, and it's like you could also
else?
even say like this is like a almost like a world upside down kind of thing. Like she feels like probably almost disoriented, and like this person she's put her faith in is like kind of upended it. So like just a subtle thing of like the light isn't behaving as it should. Like I think is actually perhaps like linking it to that idea. But yeah, I know I generally like I will say I am a big proponent of using tripods a lot. I find that I'm often like very frustrated at the things I watch when like a shot is needlessly handheld. Like it's handheld in a very frankly pathetic attempt to make something feel raw, and like to try to do this like cinema verite like kind of thing. Or sometimes like I haven't watched many of these films, but I know like the Dogma films also kind of do that, like the Lars von Trier.
I haven't seen any of those.
I haven't seen any of them, but I know that that's like part of it. But like I think most of the modern examples I see of this are poorly used, and so I do I like to see just like a well composed shot on sticks. Although I don't think the composition is insanely great in this movie.
And maybe that's why I'm not picking up on that transcendental as much, because I feel like the framing isn't quite as considered, perhaps. Whereas First Reformed is like you know, to be a bit cliche about it, like one of those every frame is a painting kind of thing.
Sure.
Like every shot is like very well thought out, and this I feel less strongly about.
Yeah. No, I think that like there's most shots are like at like chest or eye level, for example. Like that was something I noticed. Like the camera is often at the same vertical level, and like that's kind of a boring thing. And I don't know. I don't have that much to say about it, but
no. Do you have anything else to say about this movie? I've kind of run my course.
No, I think I've run mine as well.
Okay, well, all our courses are run. So, Aidan, we have a new, not a new, same old segment, but our favorite segment, classic segment. What is that segment?
So the podcast is called Predator versus Movies. We've done the movie part. Now it's time to get into the Predator. We asked the question, would this movie be better if the Predator from the movie Predator was in it? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Like, give us something, you know? Like,
Could the Predator be redeemed? You getting into the idea, like, predators have this whole culture of hunting and killing. Can a predator overcome this deeply ingrained tradition?
If he learned these traditions, and he just grew up like that, you know, like his parents just taught him, can you really blame him? You know? It's his culture. That's dark. Yeah. And then he tries to marry a human. That's obscene. But it's just like the predator, queen predator, who's like click 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 click. Subtitled, that's obscene. We have another segment. Peter usually delivers
it's
this one.
Sigourney Weaver it's Ripley. Ripley who comes.
That's Alien. It is the extended Predator Alien universe because of Predator versus Alien. Yes, you're right. We have another segment called Predator's Picks. Basically, we're going to tell you what we've been watching, listening to, reading, etc. Aidan, what have you for us this week?
So I do have The Wire down here, but now that I'm thinking of it, I don't know if I actually talked about this. I finished season 4. I don't know if I talked about that last week. I can't remember. You finished
a season, so that might have been it.
Okay, well then I have not watched the show since last week, if that is the case. Okay, so I finished season 4 last week. Great show. Yeah, I did talk about it. Now I remember it. I also, directly after watching Master Gardener, turned on the movie Fargo by the Coen brothers. That's a good
much
movie.
better movie.
Have
you seen that before?
No, I've never seen it. I think I'm gonna go through the Coen catalog as it is, because I haven't seen very many of them.
Did you finish the Spielberg Lynch catalog?
No, because I'm never gonna be able to do that. Like, just sit through one for, like, because I have to jump around.
Okay.
But yeah, I might stick to a couple Coen movies here and there. But yeah, this was a great movie. A lot of prairie humor, I will say. A lot of prairie based humor in this movie, which as a prairie boy myself, I do appreciate that. Like
I'd say more
very
Midwest. I would say more than prairie per se, because they are
they're like specific.
Okay.
I think a lot of like, and also specific to Minnesota. I actually think a lot of like both the themes and both the thematic resonance in the movie. I use that phrase all the time, and I hate saying it, but whatever. And the comedy, I think, come from how esoteric. Like it is like this Minnesotan. It's like this Minnesotan community that is like the most average it could be. That through a series of events spirals into this almost like American mythic thing. So it's like this transposition of the like a story within the American mythos onto this like regular Minnesotan prairie town. But then there are specific like prairie jokes, like a bit of a spoiler here. But there's a character who is hiding money along the side of a road at one point, and he buries it in the snow. And he looks one way, and it's just like flat prairie for as far as you can see. Looks the other way, flat prairie as far as you can see. Puts the tiniest little trowel up, and then walks away. And like that's hilarious because he's never going to find that. And like that is like that's a prairie specific joke, and that's also really funny.
Wasn't he using? I might be wrong, but wasn't he using like a car ice scraper? Like I don't think it was an actual trowel. Like it was very.
Oh,
like,
maybe yeah.
I think it was an ice scraper, which is I think very Midwestern.
Yeah, and there's also
prairie.
There's a funny joke near the beginning where Frances McDormand's character like goes out and like her car doesn't start. And she's like, "Oh, we need to jump it," like or whatever. Yeah.
But they're also talking in like their Midwest. I can't do it, but
in their but it's not just Midwest. It's Minnesota specifically, that accent.
It's
even though Fargo is actually North Dakota, but most of the movie doesn't take place in Fargo. Interesting.
It's very regional, and I like in that one William H. Macy just being like the most loser man you've ever met, who can't
who shouldn't be in that situation. Like he should never be in that situation, which I think is part of the greatness of the movie.
Because like he's like you said, like the most average man, but then he, if I'm remembering correctly, he contracts people to kill his wife because to kidnap his wife because it was a scheme
because her dad is rich and he needs money. Yeah.
Because he's just such a big loser, and I like how like average Joe who turns evil or like just this dumb shit is contrasted by like Frances McDormand also being like kind of average Joe police person, but she's the good side of that.
Right, and she's very good at her job. Frances McDormand is great in this movie as well. Great performance here. That was a great movie. Very funny. Would recommend.
Nice. Have you seen A Serious Man?
No.
That's a Coen Brothers one. I like that one a lot. That was 2011 or so, and it's what the hell is his name? It's that guy who's in everything, but
Tim Blake
he was
Nelson?
in Bones and All.
I thought. Yeah.
It was the Bones and All Doctor Strange guy, who was also in Men in Black 3 as the unicorn guy. In fact, that is what I will use to find his name.
But I will say that No Country for Old Men.
Michael Stuhlbarg is his name.
Okay. But No Country for Old Men is perhaps one of my favorite movies, I think. I haven't seen it in a long time. But when I saw that movie, I loved it. And so I did see it as a teenager, so I'd want to rewatch it, but yeah.
Yeah. I would say A Serious Man is a good one. That's Michael Stuhlbarg and like a different version of losing faith in God or questioning one's place in the universe, but from a very like Jewish perspective. Whereas usually it's like your country priest kind of thing. So kind of contrasts nicely with First Reformed actually. Can't think of I've seen Raising Arizona. I didn't actually care for that one, but I have some picks that I've seen this week. I guess I'll start with the obvious. So yeah, I rewatched First Reformed and Card Counter this week in anticipation for this. First Reformed is great. I'm not sure it's perfect, but I really like it. I think it's well thought out. I think also what I realized in this rewatch was that it's not really it's not a movie that's like about eco-terrorism or supporting that ideology, whereas How to Blow Up a Pipeline is. It's using that as a backdrop to explore a character. It's a character study, and the character happens to become involved in that kind of community or like that ideology, but it's not endorsing that. It's not to say that it's bad, but like, you know, like it's not about that. It's a backdrop. And so that's something I had to kind of switch in my mind, and I think it makes it maybe stronger like in my mind, that I think it's not about that, and I just had to realize that. Not to say that movies about eco-terrorism and whether or not that's good are not good movies. How to Blow Up a Pipeline, good movie. Anyways, Card Counter, bad movie. Boring, nothing happens, and I only really like Oscar Isaac in that movie. Another movie that I watched was, I finished the Rocky trilogy, or more than trilogy, nineology. Like it's like a Star Wars at this point. And I did it like a Star Wars order too. I started with Creed and then went back and then did some hopping around. So I finished with Rocky Balboa, which isn't a terrible spot to end. I'm sure the Creed movies are kind of better, but it kind of sets up where Creed starts, which I mean obviously wasn't the intent of the movie, but kind of like I found that it was the first film that tries to do Rocky 1 again that succeeded. Sure. So he's back in Philly, and he's not the rich and famous Rocky he was after the first movie. He's really just like an average Joe, kind of like former hero, and he's struggling with real life and sort of stuff. So I thought it was a lot better from 5 and 4. Also, I think it's better than 3, but I think 2 is still better. That's kind of a silly ranking game, but
sure.
Yeah, it was all right. It was a pretty good movie. I watched, so that's done. Now I'm doing the Mission Impossible rewatch ahead of Dead Reckoning. So I did go to Mission Impossible 2. Really bad. I've seen that one before. Yeah. I just did not remember how bad it was. They really took like Mission Impossible 1, which is spy heist paranoia thriller, and turned it into like action romance. Completely different genres. Do not feel at all like the same film. They're from 2 different directors, so that obviously explains that. But yeah, just like John Woo did not have the same vision as
Brian De Palma.
Thank you, De Palma. And I really didn't care for it. Thandie Newton is the lead.
You're moving on to J.J. Abrams next time for the next one.
Yes, it's not. I think it might be a little better. I can't really remember, but I think people generally. Yeah, people generally hold the second one as the worst, so I think it's only up from here. But like, it's pretty crazy how different it feels from the first one, and yet is also kind of like a hint of where it's gonna go, because the first one is not action heavy at all. No. Like the final scene is on a train, and they're not fighting. I guess there's the stunt bit, the very end with the helicopter, but all that's CG too. And then this movie, there's like, he's free soloing on that big rock. There's like the final 30 minutes is a non-stop car chase action. Like there's this great moment where Tom Cruise and Bland Bad Guy are playing chicken on the motorcycle, and then they simultaneously jump off their motorcycles and just throw themselves at each other. And obviously, same momentum, they just stop midair and like fall, and like it's crazy. It kind of works, but it's insane. It's insanity. The script is terrible, very boring. And I was trying to say, Tandy Newton, great actor, but just treated like an object, like a prop. Just one of those, like, the setup for that movie is so bad. It's, he meets this girl, he has to get this person on his team, and he decides the way he's going to do that is by seducing her. Not great. Maybe it's genuine, who's to say. But then after the fact, he discovers that her role on the team is to pretend to be with her ex-partner again. And that's the movie. The conflict is Tom Cruise being like, oh God, I hate that she's with her ex-boyfriend. Oh, I hate it so fucking much. I hate that guy. And it's just like, obviously, the sexual, like, oh, I'm so mad that she's with her ex-boyfriend. Yeah. Oh, makes me so mad. And it's like, why is this what you're doing? It's a really weird choice. Bad movie. Last movie I have to talk about, it's the Trash Cult selection for this month. It's Purana Mandir. I think I spelled that right. It's a movie, like a Bollywood. It's maybe not the first, but one of the most famous Bollywood horror films. So I watched that with friend of the pod, Sasha. It was fun. There were some good moments. Quite long, and it's from the 80s, so it's more campy than it is, like, it's not scary whatsoever.
Right.
It feels like a 60s horror movie,
right.
Just kind of like with the special effects and stuff. But there's some, we enjoyed it. There was some funny stuff. Last two things, TV shows. Still watching Clone High. Some episodes that I didn't care for, but I still like the show in general. So I still hope that they bring Gandhi back. I know there was the hunger strike, but I miss him. He was a fun character. And then Better Call Saul. I wanted to make an amendment to something I said previously. You asked me if the cinematography was good, and I said, I don't know. I haven't been paying attention. It's really good. I was not paying attention, but now I have because I've been thinking about it. Yeah. It's very good cinematography. I actually noticed, too, that the lighting is always very interesting. Like, the way they light it feels very much like, oh, you set up a light. There's a light outside, and it's not exactly natural. Like, there's a bit of a feeling like, oh, I know exactly how they lit this scene, and it's not the overhead lights. They chose to light it in this very dramatic way, almost high-key, like getting in that territory. So I found that very interesting. But, like, shot choice is always great. Camera movement, it's really great. Great show. I'm almost finished rewatching season 1. So that's it for my Predators picks. Next week, I don't think we're doing Asteroid City, I think is the conclusion we came to.
I think so.
Maybe we could do, like, something for Mission Impossible, maybe. Like, if I get somewhere to a good point in my rewatch, like, I could jump ahead to, like, I will tell 4.
Yeah, and I'll say 5 and 6 in my memory. Like, I love those movies so much. 5 and 6 are so fucking good.
So we might do a rewind to one of those classics, just because we won't be able to watch Asteroid City just yet. We could watch Elemental. I feel like that's a big downgrade though from Mission Impossible. We also refuse to watch The Flash. We're not doing it.
No Flash.
So that's pretty well it. If you like our stuff, check us out on at Predator v Movies on Instagram and Twitter. And I don't know where I'm going with this. If you like my thoughts on movies, check me out on Letterboxd at _AlexGordon_. I leave reviews.
You can also check me out on Letterboxd. I'm 810sunny. That's 810SONNY. My name is Wombo. I also leave reviews sometimes.
Maybe I'll start doing that on purpose, where I end my thing on a purposefully deceptive, like, inflection, so that it seems like I'm not done what I'm saying, and then you're like,
so then we have more awkward pauses, and that's what we need.
Yeah. No, it's great. Peter, do you have anything to plug? Oh my God.
What?
He's not here.
I don't hear anything. You know what that means?
Tell us what it means.
It means that you guys have to leave a review on the podcast on whatever platform you listen on or consume it on, whether that be YouTube, Spotify. Leave a like, give us a star rating, call your mother. You know what I mean?
Tell us what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell people about the show. You like it. You love it. I guess that's it. So until next week, I'm Alex.
I'm Aidan. No Peter.
And this is Predator. Yes, and this is Predator versus Movies. Beep, 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 beep.